On December 19th, 2015, a couple of up-and-coming welterweight prospects met on the preliminary card of UFC on Fox 17. They were a Nigerian-born American named Kamaru Usman and a Jamaican-born Englishman named Leon Edwards. On that night, Usman prevailed in a competitive fight, winning the second and third rounds to take a unanimous decision. 5 years later, neither man has lost another fight. Usman, of course, is the UFC welterweight champion, riding a 16-fight winning streak and one of the most dominant fighters in the sport. Edwards' path has been a little rockier, no pun intended, but quite impressive in its own right. The man from Birmingham has won 8 straight since his loss to Usman, and if he prevails in this Saturday's main event, he will pass John Fitch for the most consecutive wins without a title shot in the history of the UFC welterweight division. That string of frustration seems likely to end if Edwards wins this weekend, with none other than the champ, Usman, calling for him to finally get his shot. But in order to do that, he will need to get past the red-hot Belal Muhammad. Hello and welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 187, Edwards vs. Muhammad, also known as UFC Vegas 21. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com, and with me is Keith Schillen. Keith is executive producer of the Loudmouth MMA Network, as well as the Sherdog Radio Network, where he is host and creator of numerous shows, including MMA Past, Present, and Future, and, of course, the Schillen and Duffy Show. Keith, how are you this evening?
Dan, I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Can we do something we normally don't do?
Absolutely.
We never go back and, look at last week's, predictions. Mm-hmm. But I think every once in a while when you predict as well as we do, we should give ourselves a pat on the back. And specifically I'm talking about that both me and you both predicted that we would have a new UFC bantamweight champion, Aljamain Sterling. I mean, can we get some props for our pick?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and both of us picked him by disqualification, right? Oh, what a crazy night of fights that was last weekend, for a 15-fight card. I think both you and I agreed, shockingly entertaining. Like almost all of them were at least good. Several of them were extremely good. And even the weird ones gave us plenty to talk about.
And that just leads us into Cortney Casey versus JJ Aldrich.
Yeah, if we start off a preview by talking about the last weekend's card, that tells you something about the card that's coming up. This card, it has several really intriguing fights on it. It has several more really intriguing fighters in not so intriguing fights. But yeah, I mean, flat out, we could easily have gone last week without putting anybody on our cut list in the recap. This week, there are a half dozen fighters in this card who probably are not UFC material.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot on the cut list on the recap show.
I suspect so. I mean, anything else to say about this card as a whole, or should we just dive straight into the undercard?
Yeah, let's get right into it. Let's give the people what they want, this loaded undercard.
The UFC Fight Night 187 prelims kick off with a welterweight matchup between Jason Witt and Matheus Semelsberger. Witt, the 34-year-old, is 18-6 overall. He is 1-1 in the UFC since joining, kind of middle of last year. He lost his debut to Takashi Sato in June, then came back for the Halloween card and defeated Cole Williams by a second-round arm triangle choke. He is facing Semelsberger, the 28-year-old from Maryland, is 7-2 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC, having made a successful debut against Carlton Minus at UFC on ESPN 15 last August. Semelsberger, the younger, the less experienced man, but nonetheless the slight favorite, he is out there around minus 130 right now, where you can get Witt around plus 110 or plus 115. Keith, who do you see winning this one? And honestly, this fight being what it is, what do you see as the ceiling for these guys? Like, are either of these guys like blue chip prospect material?
No, absolutely not. Neither guy. I think these guys are going to be regulated to the prelims for the remainder of the UFC career, unless it's a showcase fight for somebody else where they're serving as that spring for somebody else. I'll start with Witt. He's not very athletic. I'll give him credit. He's a pressure fighter. He does very well to pressure forward, but he's kind of flat-footed. He's kind of stiff. Switches stances. I didn't stop saying that because at this point everyone switches stances. His hands are pretty slow, though I do like that he targets the body. Kicks are pretty hard. He keeps his chin high in the air, though. He changes levels up and down, kind of faking his wrestling. Like he's faking a shot as part of his feints to set up his hands, which I like, and then he will look for takedowns. He's extremely strong. Like if he grabs your leg, he can just pick you up and slam you. We saw that against Cole Williams, where at one point he, like Matt Hughes, Frank tricked him, where he picked him up and then walked all the way across to the other side of the cage before slamming him. Heavy top control, kind of a outdated ground and pound style though. Like your Mark Coleman, your Tito Ortiz style. Like he wants to sit in the guard and kind of land blows from that, and that was a lot of the regional scene film. Though he did get a submission in his last fight. Semelsberger, he actually is a good athlete. They'll mention on the broadcast like 10 times that he was a former NCAA football player. Good output, pretty fast hands, some nice snap on his punches, pretty good power, nice counter right hand. He has a traditional high boxing guard. Makes a mistake of backing up straight on the center line. He also targets the body, which I like. Hard kicks. Not a bad wrestler. Pretty good entries. But he really needs to improve his top control. I mean, he couldn't keep Carlton Minus down, who I think most would say is probably not even UFC level. So started right away. This is a tough matchup. I think Witt has the advantage on the ground. I think Semelsberger probably has the advantage on the feet. I think Semelsberger has the higher ceiling, as you kind of just asked, like, what's their ceiling? But Witt is more experienced, and to me, at this point in the career, he's probably a little bit more of a finished product. So with less than zero confidence, I will take Witt, and honestly, I'm locking this in right first fight of the night as my upset special.
I'm with you on Semelsberger having a higher ceiling just because I think we can already see right now, like Witt right now this is prime Witt. This is as good as he's going to be. He's kind of maxed out his athletic potential. You described his game, very, very well. And that's what he's brought consistently, from his last fights on the regional scene up to his UFC fights. You never know what you're going to get with someone like Semelsberger, who has fewer than 10 fights and is very much a raw prospect in terms of his experience, in terms of his potential as an athlete. I mean, this is the kind of guy that a couple of years ago, he'd probably be another win or two, even from getting on the Contender Series. But the UFC being what it is now, they need bodies. Semelsberger's got one, and here he is. I'm with you, though. With a guy like Semelsberger, there's always the chance that he turns a corner overnight, and from one fight to the next, you're like, oh, holy cow, who is this guy? But I'm not going to bet for that to happen. So, yeah, I'm with you. Give me Witt in a grindy win where Semelsberger probably has like some flashes and puts him in danger, especially in the first 2 rounds. But Witt just picks up 2 rounds out of 3. Next up, it is a strawweight matchup between the debuting Gloria de Paula and Jinh Frey. De Paula, the 25-year-old Brazilian, is 5-2 in her young mixed martial arts career. This will be her first appearance in the real octagon after a successful appearance in the Contender Series octagon against Paulina Macias back in November. She will be taking on Jinh Frey, who's had a rough couple of years. This time 2 years ago, Frey was the Invicta FC atomweight champion and one of the 4 or 5 top atomweights in the world. Since then, she has gone 1-3, and in that one win, she missed weight for one of her own title defenses, leaving the Invicta atomweight belt vacant after defeating Ashley Cummins. More importantly, for her immediate prospects, Frey is currently 0-2 in the UFC, having lost to Kay Hansen and Loma Lubunmi in June and October of last year, respectively. Reflecting Frey's fall from prominence, De Paula is the favorite coming into her UFC debut. She's out there around -185 or -190, where Frey is available at +165. or plus 170 even as the underdog. I'll just say Frey was a dangerous fighter to pick in a fight, even when she was at the height of her powers, even when she was at atomweight and Invicta. And, again, probably the third or fourth best atomweight in the world, because under the ideal perfect circumstances, Jinh Frey just barely wins a fight. She's so deliberate. She's so buttoned down. She's so low volume that even she could beat Mina Grusander and take all 5 rounds from her, and it still felt like a super close fight because each individual round was super close. That makes her a dangerous person to pick. And at strawweight in the UFC, she's even more dangerous to pick because at atomweight, I mean, you look at the woman, and she is one of the most just ripped physical specimens in the sport. But she's a 5'3", 105, now 115 pound woman. That power has not carried over to UFC level strawweights. Kay Hansen is a burly, athletic young fighter, but Loma Lobumi is tiny. She's also a former atomweight, and she handled Frey as well. Frey is 35. Obviously, women's and men's weight classes don't line up one for one, but women's atomweight / strawweight kind of lines up with men's bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight to me. Those are divisions where speed does kill, and especially if you're someone like Frey, who was never quite as explosive as it looked like you should be, maybe just because she is such a deliberate fighter. I just don't have any faith in her anymore. I don't know what Gloria de Paula's ceiling is, but I know that her floor is above Jinh Frey right now. Give me Gloria de Paula by decision.
Wow. First of all, I'm glad that you brought up Jinh Frey's decision wins, that she always seemed to get the nod in really close fights. I scored the second fight for Ashley Cummins for Cummins. I also gave both Grusander fights to Grusander. I gave her both fights, and she lost both. You mentioned it. 35 years old. She's, as you mentioned, undersized. She's the reason why she had close fights is she's always been a very low output, slow you down, striking, kind of like a early Lyoto Machida when Lyoto Machida first came into the UFC and he just snoozed everyone to death. Counter striker. She kind of relies on her opponents to attack her, to open up her own counterattacks. She will grind you in the clinch where she has kind of fight she wants, which is kind of surprising when you look at her last fight against Loma, who batted her with elbows and destroyed her in the clinch. She will look for a takedown from there. She'll drop down on a single leg. She also could shoot from the outside. Her takedown defense, if you attack her, is pretty good, but she struggles if you put her on her back. Now, you move to DePaulo. DePaulo is a Contender Series girl. This is actually one of the girls I really liked in the Contender Series. She's much better than her record, especially her early record indicates. She's a high-volume striker. She's light on her feet, long and lengthy, fast hands, works behind a long jab, straight punches down the pipe, accurate right hand, throws combos, pretty decent power. I mean, she dropped her opponent in the Contender Series. Though defensively, she does a lot of pillaring, which I don't like. We've talked about before. Nice kicks. I love the step-in knees. Strong, also stronger than Muay Thai plum. Knees and elbows in close. Dirty boxing style. Knees to the body kind of thing. She will sneak in and take down herself. Top control is solid. I wouldn't say she's a big submission threat, but she was attacking Paulina Macias's head a lot. She was looking for Darce chokes and guillotines and stuff like that. Hard ground and pound if she's on top. Though I would say weak takedown defense though. And I actually saw her get headlocked once in the regional scene, which I don't like. I would say this is a close fight. You picked you're very confident Macias, and I totally agree with the ceiling of Macias is way higher than Frey at this point. But the experience level Frey is still a tough out for anybody making their UFC debut. If Frey can get to the clinch or just kind of turn into a wrestling match, she could win. But when I think of Frey, I kind of think of where I feel I think about Jessica Aguilar, where at one time she was one of the best fighters outside the UFC, just when the UFC didn't have her division. And then by the time they added it, it was a little too late. Now, in Frey's case, she had to move up a weight class, which made it even worse. I think the Paula is probably strong enough in the clinch that she can kind of handle her own in the battle. Hopefully, can stop some takedowns. And I think she's well-rounded. I think she's athletic. I think she's obviously young and kind of on the rise. I think she makes her statement in her debut. I think the Paula wins by unanimous decision. I think Junior Frey is going to be on both of our cut lists.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Frey might even be on mine if she wins, because it's going to be a terrible fight if she does. Next up on the UFC Vegas 21 prelims, it is a flyweight matchup between Cortney Casey and JJ Aldrich. Casey, the 33-year-old Arizonan, is 9-8 overall. She is a very modest 5-7 in the UFC. She fought most recently last June at UFC on ESPN 11, losing to Jillian Robertson by rear naked choke in the third round. Before that, she took an armbar submission over Mara Romero Barella at UFC on ESPN 8 back last May. Aldrich, the 28-year-old, is 8-4 overall. She is 4-3 in the UFC. Casey is currently just a slight underdog. She's out there at plus 130 or so. Aldrich available at minus 150 as the favorite. Keith, who do you have in this one?
Well, first of all, I was actually a little surprised that Aldrich was the favorite. I would have thought Casey, being a bigger name and has some bigger wins, I thought she was going to be the favorite. I'll start with Casey. She's a boxer. I'll say that. Even though she's moving up a weight, recently moved up to flyweight, she's actually pretty big and still strong for that weight class. She sits on her punches, throws combinations, a lot of kicks from range. Though she is a terrible wrestler. I said this last time we broke down her fight. Dominic Cruz said against Jillian Robertson that her takedown defense was non-existent. She is a submission threat off her back. She caught Mara Romero Barella, as you mentioned, off her back. But she will give away rounds by not scrambling to her feet. Move over to Aldrich, southpaw counter striker, uses lots of movements, and she's trying to get her opponent to chase her into her punches. I would say good boxing, pretty fast hands, accurate straight left, tends to have some low output at times, one strike at times. She also headhunts, which is something that I don't like. I think she needs to go to the body a little bit more. And she doesn't have too much power. She's probably a little undersized. She looks like she can go down a weight class. She also got destroyed in the clinch by Sabina Mazo. I would say she's a better wrestler than Cortney Casey, which is not saying much. She's a pretty decent offensive and defensive wrestler, though she hardly ever uses her grappling. This is a hard fight to pick. I don't see either girl looking for a takedown, so I expect it to be on the feet. Aldrich is probably the better pure boxer, while Casey's the better kickboxer. To me, this has split decision written all over it. I expected, before looking at the film, that this was going to be one of my upset or maybe my upset special. But Aldrich actually is right now the betting favorite. I actually think Aldrich is going to win by split decision.
Man, this is not going to be one of those nights that we have a whole lot of dissension, apparently. I'm feeling a lot of the same you are. Cortney Casey's takedown defense is awful. You pointed out the Robertson fight. I always go back to when she just got taken down easily and kind of bullied around in the clinch as well by Michelle Waterson, one of the tiniest strawweights in the division, a former atomweight. Now Casey's all the way up at 125. I think Aldrich, if she wanted to, could probably take Casey down at will and just, turn this into a grind out on the ground. But I'm with you. I don't think she'll probably want to. I think by preference, she's going to want to make this into a striking match. That gives Casey more opportunities, but I still have Aldrich in this one just narrowly. I think of the two former strawweights, she's probably the slightly stronger, even slightly more athletic one, and I see her as well taking a close decision. Next up, it is a lightweight matchup between Nasrat Haqparast and late opponents Rafa Garcia, who steps in for Don Madge. Haqparast, the 25-year-old Afghanistani, is 12-3 overall. He is 4-2 in the UFC. He fought twice last year, defeating Alex Munoz by unanimous decision back at UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Olenek in August. and losing to Drew Dober by quick knockout at UFC 246. He will be welcoming Garcia to the octagon. The 26-year-old Mexican is a perfect 11-0 in his mixed martial arts career. He has competed for the last 8 fights in Combate Americas, where he has taken on in his last few fights some UFC veterans, Humberto Bandenay, Estevan Payan, but nonetheless, Garcia taking a huge step up in competition here against one of the more intriguing prospects in the UFC in Haqparast, and the odds reflect that. Haqparast, one of the stronger favorites on the card at minus 325. Garcia available around plus 300. Keith, who do you like in this one? And if your answer is what I think it's going to be, do you think there's any place for Rafa Garcia in the UFC after this fight?
Yeah, so I'll start with Garcia then. Yeah, Garcia, I mean, he's undefeated, so you got to like that. He's got some pretty good regional experience. I mean, fighting in Combate, he's beat some good fighters. His last fight was against Humberto Bandenay, a former UFC fighter, so that's good. His style, he's very aggressive, though he's aggressive but kind of flat-footed. He doesn't really cut off the cage that well. He isn't a great athlete. He throws a lot of looping shots, and he kind of leaps into his own shots, but they're kind of wild and telegraphed. He will shoot for a takedown, and he's relentless to get them, but they kind of are very ugly. He kind of just ducks his head and reaches forward, but somehow it's effective. But I think that's effective on Combate level. Like, I don't expect it to work, especially not against a guy like Haqparast. Haqparast is a very tough out in your UFC debut because Haqparast is a very solid fighter. He's well-rounded, southpaw. It's funny because he gets compared to Kelvin Gastelum because of, they look like twins. But their styles are actually similar too. Like the way they fight, pressure fighter, throws hard, fast hands. Like that's one thing about Gastelum is his hand speed. It really steps in the pocket, similar to what Gastelum does. His overhand left is money shot, just like Gastelum. He's got some nice power, good feints on his attacks. He can grapple. He doesn't look to grapple, but when he needs to, he's got some good entries, good top control. He's we got ground and pound, more ground and pound than submission. I think Gastelum's a little more of a submission. But it's funny. It's one of those ones where you're like, oh, that's a weak comparison. Then you're like, break down the film. You actually, they're extremely similar. As far as who wins this fight, I mean, this fight is tailor-made for Haqparast. I mean, he is faster. He hits harder. He's way more technical. He's got way more experience. Garcia has never lost, so obviously he's never been knocked out. But I think it happens now. Give me Haqparast, and I say he knocks him out in the first round. That says, as you mentioned, Don Madge was supposed to be the matchup. That would have been a really good fight. Like, I don't know who I would pick. Like, I didn't do the tape study on Madge. But this fight was already announced. But that would have been a much better fight. This is to me a paycheck for Haqparast.
I'm with you, and it's nice to see Rafa Garcia make it here, but the guys that he's beaten in Combate, guys like, Estevan Payan, Humberto Bandenay, they're guys who didn't win any fights in the UFC. Garcia will get another chance after this, but he's undersized. He's not a particularly, crazy great athlete, and he has the kind of aggression that UFC level lightweights are not going to be fazed by and are going to be able to turn against him. The only, this is a huge mismatch. And this is Haqparast's fight to put away whenever he wants, probably just by knockout on the feet. I'm going to give it round 2 just because TriStar, moving to TriStar Gym, your opponent always has a chance to make it out of the first round. And that's what I'm banking on here. So give me Nasrat Haqparast by second round TKO. Next up on the UFC Fight Night 187 prelims, it is a bantamweight matchup between the veteran Yahya and the relative newcomer Ray Rodriguez. Rodriguez, the 33-year-old Texan, is 16-7 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC, having stepped in on short notice to take on Brian Kelleher back at UFC Fight Night Overeem versus Sakai last September. Kelleher put him away with a guillotine choke in about 30 seconds, so we didn't get to see much there. He actually appeared on Dana White's Contender Series Season 3 back in 2019 and lost a third-round TKO there. Welcoming him back to the octagon for his second appearance will be Yahya, who I will say flat out, I was stunned that Hani Yahya is only 36 years old, and I was a little surprised that Hani Yahya's UFC record is as good as it is. Overall, he is 26-10-1 with one no contest. He is 11-4-1 with one no contest since joining the UFC after the dissolution of World Extreme Cage Fighting. Yahya, the comfortable favorite here. He is available as high as or as low as minus 290. You can get Rodriguez around plus 245 or plus 250 as the underdog. I like Ray Rodriguez as a fighter. I want him to be UFC material and stick around because he is a fun grappler to watch. Here in Texas, he's definitely known as an exciting grappler. He comes from Ohana Academy, probably the top gym in San Antonio. And while they are definitely a mixed martial arts gym, they're known for turning out kind of aggressive, submission-oriented grapplers. Unfortunately, the 40-second guillotine loss to Brian Kelleher might be a better indication of how his grappling is going to match up with UFC level grapplers. And if there's one thing you can say about Hani Yahya, it is that he is, it's not just that he's a grappling specialist. He is like an old school submission specialist. The guy has been fighting for close to 20 years, and he doesn't even have a TKO on his record by accident. Like, even Damian Maia has accidentally knocked some people out and probably apologized afterwards. Hani Yahya, it has 26 career wins with 20 submissions and plenty of sassy stuff there. North-south chokes. I know that north-south chokes are kind of a typical big man submission, but for like 135, 140-pound guy to get that is pretty crazy. He's the kind of guy, he'll go for leg locks. He will, he loves to, scramble and take the back. He's more of the rabid Wolverine, take your back guy than just the methodical, Formiga or Damian Maia backpack type fighter. Yahya is a guy who can always lose a fight in kind of a weird, head-scratching, embarrassing way, which is why I was a little surprised that his UFC record is so good. I think I just kind of even wrote him off coming in out of the WEC as, well, he'll be a lot of fun, but he won't spend any significant time in the top 10 because he'll always win 2 and then just lose some terrible fight. But he has a good record in the UFC bantamweight division, and while he can lose a fight in weird and terrible ways, they're not the weird and terrible ways that Ray Rodriguez is going to be able to put on him. That's the main problem here. Give me Hani Yahya, and give me Yahya by third round submission. We'll get some exciting grappling. We'll probably get some terrible kickboxing, but Rodriguez will get tired first, and then it'll be all over. Yahya will take his back, and either get a rear naked choke or an armbar or something.
Yeah, so Yahya is 36 years old, as you mentioned. I agree with you. He seems like he should be older. He should be like his mid-40s. He was never been a good striker, and he's at 36. You expect him to kind of lose a step, so that is obviously troublesome. But he is so aggressive in his striking that it actually somewhat becomes effective, because when you throw as hard as he does, you're going to have to block it. And he will throw wild because he wants you to be dumb enough to go for a takedown on him. He leaves himself open to be taken down. Or if he's throwing so hard, you're going to raise your hands because you have to block it. He's going to catch you with a shot. And then you raise your hands and he can shoot underneath. Or the third option is he can get close enough, he'll just pull guard. And he'll pull guard is because, as you say, he's not just a good grappler. He's an extremely high-level submission artist. Great at scrambles. He has some of the slickest back takes I've ever seen. You mentioned he's got 20 career submissions. You mentioned how he has a high variety of submissions. He's hit pretty much every single submission there is one time in his career. The one thing I'm really worried about his last fight is that he really gassed out against Enrique Barzola. But that Enrique Barzola is a tricky, heavy, top-level wrestler. I don't expect that in this fight. Now, move on to Ray Rodriguez. I think he's pretty well-rounded. I would say he's aggressive striker on the feet, so if this stays on the feet, it could be kind of fun. Fast hands, fast kicks. Will attack with combos. Will attack the body. Hard kicks to the body. He likes to get to the clinch and kind of big brother you, bully you in there, knees and elbows. He's not a good wrestler, but as you mentioned, he is a good grappler. Like when I did tape study for him when he was on the Contender Series. I think he was still a brown belt. He might be a black belt by now. I'm not sure. But he's aggressive submissions both on top and on bottom. Though he does like to play the BJJ game on his back, which would not be a good idea against someone like Rani Yahya. But I also like that if he's on top, he'll beat you up with punches and then look for the submission. Rodriguez, to win this fight, he's going to need to use a sprawl and brawl game in this one, and I just don't think he can do it or will do it. I expect Yahya to take him down. I expect Yahya to submit him. I expect him to do it pretty quickly. If Ryan Keller can submit you in the first round, I'm pretty sure Rani Yahya can too. So give me Yahya and give me Yahya by first round submission.
We move over to the featherweight division, where Charles Jourdain is set to welcome Marcelo Rojo to the octagon. Jourdain, the 25-year-old Canadian, is 10-3-1 overall. He is 1-2-1 in the UFC. That final one, a draw in his most recent appearance where he had a split draw with Josh Kulabau at UFC on ESPN 16 last October. Previous to that, he lost a split decision to Andre Fili at UFC on ESPN 10 last June. He will be welcoming Rojo, the 32-year-old Argentinian, is 16-6 overall. He last fought all the way back in September of 2019. That was a win over Victor Madrigal in Combate Americas. Rojo, also typically a bantamweight. Nonetheless, stepping up here to take on Jourdain, the former lightweight, and he is quite the underdog. He plus 215, where Jourdain is available around minus 250 to minus 260 as the favorite. Keith, how do you see this one going, and who have you got?
So we talked about this card not having the highest level of fighters. Like, this fight to me is one of those. But I think this fight should be fun, and that's because Charles Jourdain can't be in a boring fight. I mean, he's very athletic. He's exciting. He really lives up to that nickname Air because he'll just throw like a flying knee for no reason at all. Like, he'll be jabbing a guy, winning, and then just like, I'm going to throw a flying knee. He's fast. He's wild to a fault where he will try crazy things, put himself in bad position. He will overthrow his punches sometimes, leaving him open to counters or being taken down. He does throw hard kicks. He doesn't like being pressured. Josh Kulabau, it was a draw. It was a very close fight. Kulabau backed him up, and that's when he had his most success. And Kulabau actually hurt him bad in the first round, almost knocked him out. Jourdain, to his credit, he is a submission threat. He has 3 career submissions, and he was constantly looking for a guillotine against Kulabau. And Kulabau was unable to keep him down. Like, he did work back to his feet pretty quickly. Move over to Rojo. He's got a lot of experience, as you mentioned. He's had 24 fights, under his belt before his UFC debut. So you got to like that. He's experienced a lot of things. I haven't watched too much film on him, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm some expert on him. But what I've seen, he's a very aggressive striker, busy jab. I love that he switches stances mid-attack to kind of get cut different angles. So he kind of like cuts, I should say, so not switch stances, but he cuts angles while he's coming in. He just doesn't come busting straight in. Good power. Calf kicks are a big part of his game. Though I did watch one fight where he was absolutely just crushed with a body shot. He does have 6 submission wins if he gets the fight to the ground. I'm not that confident in this pick at all due to my lack of film study on Rojo. That said, Jourdain is a much better athlete. As you mentioned, he's going to have a big size advantage as one's moving up a weight class. One has actually recently moved down a weight class. So you could have potentially have a 2 weight class gap between them. Give me Jourdain just too fast, too strong. So give me Jourdain. I will say just by decision.
Yeah, I'm with you in that I have just not been able to watch that much tape on Rojo. Jourdain, he is capable of getting himself in trouble and losing fights that he shouldn't, or getting a draw in a fight that maybe he should have won. There's always the chance that Rojo will be able to step in and do that. Rojo is a finisher. He's both on the feet and in submission. So if Jourdain slips up, Rojo can take advantage, but just I've not seen any evidence of Rojo doing that to fighters on the level of Jourdain or the people that Jourdain has been fighting for the last couple of years. So even though Rojo has quite a bit more experience, including he has a win due to disqualification for his opponent biting him, something that not many fighters get to experience, fortunately. I think Jourdain's going to be too much, too big, too fast. His pressure will be too much, even if he gets wild. Give me Jourdain, and give me Jourdain via TKO, second round. Next up on the prelims, we are back in the strawweight division for a fight that was set to take place a couple weeks ago. We get to enjoy it now. It is Angela Hill versus Ashley Yoder. Hill, the 36-year-old, is 12-9 overall. She is 7-9 in the UFC. She will be facing Yoder, the 33-year-old, is 8-6 overall, 3-5 in the UFC. Hill, the winner of their first meeting a few years back, is a prohibitive favorite here. She is out there around minus 380 as the favorite. Yoder available at plus 315 or so as the underdog. Keith, we talked about this fight, or prepared to talk about this fight, just a couple weeks ago. The fight got bumped because one of Yoder's cornermen had what turned out to be a false positive for COVID. Nonetheless, not much different about it, except that both women are, I think, 3 weeks older. Who have you got?
Yeah, that 3 weeks older definitely favors one of the fighters. Now, so if you've listened to our breakdown from 2 weeks ago, I am going right down my old same notes. I just copy and pasted my notes from 2 weeks ago. So I don't know if Ben is changing his breakdown. You could fast forward till you hear Ben talking. If not, you want to hear it, here's my breakdown. Hill, she's light on her feet. She's a Muay Thai striker. She's a very good out fighter. She wants to be on the outside and just work distance. Crisp jab. Though she often overextends and reaches with her punches, leaving her over to a counter strike, kind of similar to what I just talked about with Jourdain. She's good at keeping her head off the center line, though. She has this really nice dipping to her left right hand that I like. Her check left hook is good. She really worked the body in her fight against Cortney. Pretty solid in the clinch. When she gets to the clinch, she likes to frame a lot. She likes to frame, that's when you're kind of pushing on the head and creating distance to land strikes. Takedown defense is weak, though it has greatly improved, especially recently. Though the big Achilles heel on her is her inability to get on bottom, get up from bottom. Randa Marcos, Claudia, Michelle Waterson, they all had success by just taking her down and holding her down. Now, Yoder, though she doesn't have a great UFC record, she's made some big improvements since her days on Tough. She gave Randa Marcos a much better battle than I think anybody expected. The southpaw, she throws a lot of kicks from range. Her boxing needs to improve. She kind of keeps her chin high in the air. She's a taller strawweight, kind of has that tall woman's style of striking. She is a grinder in the clinch. Okay takedowns, though she does try that dumb head and arm triangle. Yoder could win this if she turns into a wrestling match, based on Hill's inability to get up from the bottom. However, I don't think she'd be able to. I think Hill's going to pick her apart from distance. I think she beats her up the clinch. I think Hill breezes to a victory. I think it's going to be Hill by decision. I think there might even be some 10-8 rounds if Hill turns up the volume. But before we move on, this week's episode of MMA Past, Present, Future, where yours truly, Keith Chillin, I actually speak to Ashley Yoder. So hopefully it's in editing. It's getting edited right now, so hopefully it'll be up by the time you listen to this show. You can listen to both back to back.
We will do everything we can to make sure that they are both available to listen to tomorrow. Yeah, I see the same dynamic here as you do. Hill is still a fantastic out striker, in spite of the fact that she's not a super long and lengthy strawweight. She's just kind of about average for the division. You never see anybody beat her in an out kickboxing match. It's the people that are able to get in earlier in her career, people who are able to get inside and just bully her in the clinch, because despite being a Muay Thai fighter, she's not a mauler in the clinch for the most part, or were able to take advantage of her takedown defense. Unfortunately, that's the same range where Yoder is most confident on the feet. She's just not as good there. So if Yoder commits to the takedown, if she knows that the way she's going to win this fight is by getting Angela Hill on the ground with herself on top of her, we've got to fight. We've got a fight on our hands, and probably be a lot of fun because Yoder either wins or she runs into something and gets knocked out. But I have the feeling that Yoder's just going to be stymied. Just Hill piecing her up on the outside, because Hill's outside striking, it stings. Like, she's not a murderous knockout artist, but women typically have not liked what they've gotten from her out there. I expect Yoder to get kind of frozen on the outside, and I could certainly see 10-8 rounds, but I don't think Yoder's going to be able to walk through the minefield and get this fight where she wants. So give me Hill by lopsided decision. The UFC Vegas 21 main card kicks off with an explosive middleweight matchup between Eryk Anders and Darren Stewart. Anders, the 33-year-old, is 13-5 overall. He is 5-5 since joining the UFC. Fought just once last year, losing a unanimous decision to Krzysztof Jotko at UFC on ESPN 8 in May. He'll be taking on Stewart. The 30-year-old Brit is 12-6 with one no contest. He is 5-6 with one no contest since joining the UFC. He fought 3 times last year, running into a pretty tough slate. He lost a split decision to Kevin Holland in September. He won via first-round submission over Maki Pitolo at UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Olenek in August. And he fought the UFC fight, not a UFC fight, against Bartosz Fabinski at Cage Warriors 113, which, if you recall, happened just as COVID was closing everything down. And so even though Fabinski and Stewart are both UFC fighters, because they were stuck in Europe, they had them fight at Cage Warriors 113 just to sneak that one extremely crucial fight, apparently, under the tape before COVID shut down the sport for a month or two. Stewart, despite the 1-2 run in the last year, is a slight favorite in this fight. He is minus 175, where you can get the former Crimson Tide linebacker Anders at plus 155. Keith, who do you like in this one?
Well, did you know that Eryk Anders played college football?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I keep that in the same part of my brain that tells me that Brian Stam was a Marine. They mentioned it. They used to mention it once or twice.
Yeah. It's funny. We talk about Eryk Anders. You talked about, his last loss, but his last win. So, when we do fights, I take a couple fights and I do a film study. I try to do more recent ones than, years ago. And one of the fights I did watch with Eryk Anders was the Jared Mershaw fight that he won. And I thought Mershaw won that fight. So I just want to mention that out there. I thought, anyways, Anders, southpaw, he constantly marching forward. He's got really good power. That's what happens when you're a linebacker for the University of Alabama national championship team too. I don't know if you know that. I think he had a big tackle in it or something. I don't know. He's pretty slow though. He's flat-footed. Relies way too much on his overhand left. He throws the overhand left over and over and over again. Just tries to knock out his foe with the same punch every time. He doesn't grapple often, but when he does, he's not bad at all. And he should do it more. Cardio was a bit of an issue against Meerschaert, but he looked so much better against Jotko in his last fight. He's the other thing that worries me about Anders is this is a guy that kind of, when he first came to UFC, they threw him right to the wolves and he was fighting all the time. And he took a lot of damage. I think about the Khalil Roundtree fight. I think about the Thiago Santos fights. Thiago Santos beat the brakes off of him. And then even Jared Mershaw hurt him. And Jared Mershaw is not a big puncher. Moving to Darren Stewart, he's also not that fast, but he also has good power. He loves a brawl, though. And that's because he's the opposite of Anders, where I trust his chin. He will invite you into the pocket and throw down. Kevin Holland blasted him with some big shots, and he just kept moving forward. Calf kicks are a big part of his game. He's just physically strong. He was there in Boston, and I ran into him, and he's just one of those same things we talk about, like William Knight. He's more wide than high, kind of thing. He loves that close battles, clinch, dirty boxing style war where you can throw a slicing elbow. He'll sneak in a takedown. He's a better grappler than he gets credited for. He can catch you in a sub. He loves the guillotine. That's like his go-to thing. And if he gets on top, he's some really good ground pound. This is an interesting matchup. I thought Anders looked much better than usual in his last fight. That said, I still like Stewart to win. He's just such a grindy, like overachiever. I look at Stewart's. I think it was his last fight was Kevin Holland. That was a really close decision. Kevin Holland's headlining next week's card. Kevin Holland's 1 or 2 wins away from a title shot. So to me, that I feel like Stewart is further in his career right now than Anders is. I feel like Anders is kind of on the decline, and Stewart might actually still, making his way up a little bit. So give me Stewart. Anders is tough, so I don't think he gets him on there. So give me Stewart by decision.
I am glad that you pointed out that Anders was kind of thrown to the wolves immediately. I mean, the guy was headlining against Lyoto Machida in his third UFC fight. And yeah, Machida was coming off a couple of losses, but those were losses to top 10 fighters. And to throw him to Machida in a 5-round fight that early on, and they had him fighting really often. He fought 4 times in 2017, 4 times in 2018, 3 times in 2019. I feel as though he hasn't had a chance to develop a game, really. Like, I think in an alternate universe, he might have become a much grindier fighter, instead of a guy that just waits and like looks for his like big knockout left. It was shocking to me when he fought Khalil Roundtree just, I guess, about 2 years ago at this point, because I thought of them as 2 guys who were roughly the same point along in their careers, but Roundtree had just developed so much more as a fighter. He outstruck him so badly, just made Anders look slow and clumsy and just a step behind the whole time. Yeah, I'm not even necessarily blaming the UFC for this, but I think there's some lost potential with Anders now that he's 33, has taken some damage, as you point out. And Anders is what he is now. I think Stewart is still kind of sneakily improving, and he's a guy that, his recent results are better than they look on paper. That Holland fight is going to age really, really well for him. Stewart could finish Anders, but really not many people have. I mean, Thiago Santos did, but Thiago Santos was a killing machine at that point. That might have been him at his most deadly. I'm not going to pick Stewart to do that. Stewart's just a little too grindy, a little too deliberate. But yeah, give me Stewart to wear down Anders and just win a decision going away. Stewart might win all 3 rounds, and I expect Anders to be kind of gassed and getting pot-shotted by Stewart by the end. Next up, it is the flyweights, as Manel Kape takes his second swing at making a good first impression in the octagon, taking on the returning Matheus Nicolau. Kape, the 27-year-old Angolan, is 15-5 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC, having been signed as the departing Ryzen Fighting Federation flyweight champ, then missing all of 2020. He finally made his debut against Alexandre Pantoja in February, losing by unanimous decision. He faces Nicolau. The 28-year-old Brazilian is 15-2-1 overall. He is 3-1 in a UFC first UFC stint that went from 2015 to 2018. He then took 2 fights outside the UFC, most recently winning in Brave CF back in August of 2019. So he was using Brave CF as a springboard back to the UFC before all the cool kids were doing it. But nonetheless, it has been well over a year and a half since he's fought in any sort of cage or ring. Despite that, odds are very close. Kape a slight favorite at -150. Nicolau available on the comeback at +130. Keith, do you still believe in Manel Kape? Did you ever believe in Manel Kape? And does he win on Saturday?
You know what? I believe in him, but I also believe in Nicolau. I love this fight. Like, it's actually one of those ones where I love it because I know both guys are good, but I actually kind of hate it because I don't want to see either guy lose because both guys kind of have their back against the wall. I mean, Nicolau is on his second return to UFC, and then Kape, that would be 0-2 in the UFC. Moving to Kape, very similar to my breakdown just a couple weeks ago of him. Exciting striker. I said that he reminded me of Takanori Gomi, his style. Big power, really, really steps in his shots when he throws. Can fight from both stances because he has power at both stances. He cuts angles in mid-attack. He does drop his hands because he relies on head movement to kind of, he throws from his hips a little bit. Will crush the body. He'll target calf kicks. He's got a very fast high kick that he kind of just keep you honest with. In the past, offensive grappling really wasn't his thing. But he looked actually for wrestling a lot against Pantoja, where he was actually initiating takedowns, which was surprising. Takedown defense is I'm still worried about. I go back to it kind of comes down to that Ulka Sasaki fight that Sasaki just turned into a wrestling match. But he showed a lot of improvement. Like when he got taken down, he worked his way up. Against Pantoja, he was like winning wrestling exchanges. Move on to Nicolau. Now, Nicolau got cut part of that flyweight dissension thing. But it's one of the worst cuts in like recent memory. I mean, the guy was 3-1 in the UFC. This guy's well-rounded. He uses lots of movement. He uses movement to set up his explosive shots. He's got fast hands, tight hooks. His left hook is his best punch. He's got some decent power, hard leg kicks. He's a great grappler, great takedown defense, good takedowns himself, good ground and pound. He's got 5 submission wins. This is a really great matchup, and I really, really wanted to pick Nicolau. I wanted to pick him. He's so well-rounded. However, Kape is so explosive that if he catches Nicolau, he can put him out. I'm staying, like, if I was a bettor, I would stay away from this fight because I'm like 50-50 on this fight. But give me Kape just because he has a better chance of finishing the fight with just one shot. So I'll take Kape, catches him in the second round.
Man. Okay, well, finally, in what I think is the 9th fight on this card, we have some extent of disagreement, but I'm right on the edge with you. The thing is, I believe in Kape as much as I ever did. I thought he might have had the expectations might have been a little too high coming in just as, a rising champ on a 3-fight winning streak of all knockouts. I mean, expectations were very high for him. But, he fought, and this was 6 weeks ago, he fought for the first time in a cage in a long, long time, for the first time, period, in over a year. And, oh, by the way, Alexandre Pantoja is a top 5 fighter, and he's a guy that's tough to look good against. So I really just want to give Kape a complete mulligan on that one and just say, okay, clean slate, start now. You can be like Shogun or Eddie Alvarez. You lose your first fight in the octagon, you don't look great, but you come back from it and things look great. But this is another hugely tough ask for him, because Pereira he's not the same fighter as Alexandre Pantoja, but he's similar in that he's well-rounded, he's at least good everywhere, and he's tough to look really good against. There's always the possibility that Kape could do to Nicolau what Dustin Ortiz did. Ortiz just blitzed him with, he hit him with a head kick that knocked him out even though he blocked it. And that's the kind of knockout that Manel Kape can land on people, because I've seen him do that to people. But I'm not going to bet on it. For one thing, Pereira is another young fighter. There's every chance he'll be better than he looked in his last UFC run here. But even if he looks the same, there's just another tough ask for Kape. Kape could even lose rounds while looking for the kill shot, as Pereira just uses pressure, uses his boxing, uses his kicks to just outscore him. If it goes to the ground, Nicolau has huge advantages there, and I have no reason to believe he won't be able to take Kape down. Like, his takedown defense has improved, but it's still not a strength for him. So give me Matheus Nicolau in a triumphant return to the UFC by decision, maybe even a lopsided decision. Kape won't be on my cut list. He won't be on the UFC's cut list, and he'll probably get a bit of a softball for his next fight. But even if he bounces back from that, this might be the end of talk of Manel Kape as a UFC flyweight title contender. Next up, it is a bantamweight matchup between Jonathan Martinez and Davey Grant. Martinez, the 26-year-old, is 13-3 overall. He is 4-2 since joining the UFC to relatively little fanfare in 2018. He is on a 2-fight winning streak, having beat Thomas Almeida by unanimous decision at UFC Fight Night Ortega versus Korean Zombie last October, and in August of last year, knocking out Frankie Saenz in the third round of their fight. He takes on Grant, the 35-year-old from England, is 12-4 overall. He is 3-3 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight win streak as well, having defeated Martin Day last July at UFC 251 by third round knockout, and having taken a split decision over Gregory Popov at UFC Fight Night Magomed Sharipov versus Kattar in November of 2019. Martinez, a heavy favorite here, is sitting out there around minus 325. You can get Grant at plus 265 or plus 270 as the underdog. Keith, how do you like Martinez, one of the more unlikely 4-2 in the UFC fighters that we have right now?
Yeah, dude just keeps winning. So I'll start with Martinez. Southpaw, he's a sharp striker. He's got a very Muay Thai style, works behind a jab. He uses a jab more defensively. He uses it to keep distance and just to score points than to kind of hurt. He lacks punching power. He's not a big puncher, though he did briefly rock Thomas Almeida in his last match, so maybe he's starting to develop some of his power. He likes to work the body. Lots of kicks, though. Teep kicks. He mixes up kicks and punches well in his combinations. He loves the flying knee, which is so funny when you look at his personality. When you see interviews with him, he's so like he seems uncomfortable doing interviews. To have like a high flying fighting style is kind of funny. Just doesn't fit with his personality. Weak takedown defense. That's definitely an area that needs to improve. Move over to Davey Grant. I kind of like Davey Grant just because he's not athletic. He's not pretty, but he's just tough. Like he's made the UFC and been somewhat successful in the UFC just by grinding and being tough. He throws punches from his hips. He did flatten Martin Day with a left hook, though he was hurt early in that fight. So I wouldn't suggest continuing trying to look for brawls. He loves side kicks, calf kicks. He'll add in a takedown, but he isn't an explosive wrestler. He's got a good get-up game if he's on bottom, and he has a submission threat. He's got 8 submissions on his record. I would say before tape study, I thought Grant was worse than he is. He's actually probably a little bit better than I remember when I rewatched this film this week. However, I'm still pretty confident in Martinez in this fight. There's a reason why he's a hefty favorite. No, do I think he should be as big of a favorite as? No, I don't think he should be that big of a favorite. But he is just faster, more technically sound. I think he pieces them up from the outside. If Martinez had more power, I would take him to win by stoppage. But because I still think the power is coming, I'm going to say Martinez wins by decision.
Yeah, I did not expect Martinez still to be in the UFC after his very short notice debut against Andre Sukumtat back in October of 2018. He just didn't seem to be UFC level or UFC ready at that point, but he bounced back and just kept winning fights. He'd lose one, then win 2. Lose another one, and he's won another 2. And Frankie Saenz and Thomas Almeida are very credible opposition. I think this is Martinez's fight to lose. Obviously, the odds lay it out as such, but yeah, I think Martinez will be able to get back up if Grant takes him down. on the feet, most of the advantages are his. He's a better striker at range. He's probably as good a striker inside. There's just not going to be any place too comfortable for Grant. I'm not calling for a finish here. Just, Grant is that tough. He's not been knocked out before. I'm not going to call for it to happen now, but give me Martinez by decision. Next up at UFC Fight Night 187, we have what I can pretty safely say is one of the most hotly anticipated matchups on the card. A featherweight scrap between Dan Ige and Gavin Tucker. Ige, the 29-year-old Hawaiian, is 14-3 overall. He is 6-2 since joining the UFC off of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series. His most recent appearance, he lost a frankly lopsided unanimous decision to Calvin Kattar at UFC on ESPN 13, snapping a very impressive 6-fight win streak for himself. He takes on Tucker, the 34-year-old Canadian, is on a 3-fight win streak of his own after taking off almost 2 full years after a horrific beating at the hands of Rick Glenn in 2017. But since coming back in mid-2019, he has defeated Sung-Woo Choi by rear naked choke, then Justin James again by rear naked choke last August, and in December took a unanimous decision over Billy Quarantillo. I'm going to step out and say that I think Dan Ige might be the top Dana White Contender Series success story so far. Like, in terms of what the Contender Series should be, because he's not a guy that came in like super highly heralded. He was just another guy, just another prospect from Hawaii, won impressively on the show, got into the UFC, lost his first fight, then went on a really impressive 6-fight winning streak, taking out people like Prasad Bektic and Edson Barboza. He clearly hit, I'm not going to say a ceiling because he's still only 29 and he's improving, but he definitely hit a wall against Kattar. Like, he was badly outclassed. But just the fact that, he came in unheralded, came to the UFC through the Contender Series and fought his way to like a legit top 10 ranking. Like, I think that's what the Contender Series is for. I think he's quietly kind of the model of what the Contender Series should be. Gavin Tucker is, he's basically a zombie movie. For those that don't remember, the beating he took from Rick Glenn at UFC 215, I thought the beatdown of that year, one of the worst beatdowns of any year in like modern high-level mixed martial arts. Just a fight that should have been stopped multiple times. There was at least one 10-7 round in there, just completely hellacious. I assumed he was never coming back. And for him not only to come back, but come back better and come back with kind of a little bit of a different skill set, different adjustments, that's really impressive. And now he is on the cusp of what Ige really wanted for the last year or two, where Ige was on this impressive win streak, and against Kattar, he finally got a shot at a guy ranked higher than himself with, bigger name value than himself. Ige is now that guy for Tucker. Having said that, I think this is a bad matchup for Tucker. Like, it's not unwinnable. I think the line is about where it should be. But Tucker's success since he's been back has been predicated on becoming a much better offensive wrestler. And once he gets people down, just being he was always a very good grappler, but just he seems to have wrestling chops and just positional strength that allows him to control the fight once it goes to the ground until he can get that submission. And it's allowed him to wear down and wear out and beat bigger fighters because he's not big for the division. The line on Ige for the longest time was that, you're undersized for the division. You could drop to 135, but Ige is going to be bigger than Tucker. Tucker's like a short little stocky guy, but just he's designed a game that saves him from the kind of beatings he took against Glenn and has allowed him to kind of neutralize the size advantage of bigger fighters. Unfortunately, Ige is going to be bigger. He's going to be stronger. He's going to be more athletic. And Ige's wrestling, both offensive and defensive, I think has always been a little underrated. When he came to the UFC, when you get, a Hawaiian prospect with fewer than 10 fights coming into the UFC, you have certain expectations. Often you expect a bit of a very aggressive, brawly striker. but he's always been a good wrestler and he's always been willing to use it. I think Ige is going to be able to keep this on the feet against Tucker, and I think he's going to beat him up. I don't know if he'll finish him, but give me Ige by a pretty clear-cut decision.
Yeah, so this is a great fight. I'll jump on what you're saying about Ige. Like Ige is just likable as you mentioned, being that he's like your lunch pail kind of guy that he has just slowly kind of made his way up the rankings of the Contender Series. The other guy that kind of jump out when you talk about guys in the Contender Series that didn't have huge hype, but worked themselves up to a really good position is the guy actually we see headlining next week's card. That's Kevin Holland. I mean, this is the guy that he didn't even get a contract off the first season. A little obviously much different personality than he. I mean, he actually talked himself into a UFC contract, but similar thing. Stayed busy, and now he's got himself in a really good situation. Back to Ige. I just like his skills. He's a compact striker who has really improved his striking over the years. He's very aggressive. He fights at like an ungodly, insane pace. Just throws heat, just like almost whips the punches at you. Good power, throws combinations. He loves he has a nice counter right hand, left hook combo he throws. He takes a lot of damage though, but he just so insanely tough. He just marches right through it. I think about the amount of damage he takes just in his last two fights. His last two fights with Edson Barboza and Calvin Kattar. I mean, he just showed how insane. He clearly, you mentioned this Hawaiian, he stereotyped the Hawaiian toughness. Like he's perfect. Like if I was a Hawaiian, that's the guy I'd want to represent me. Hard leg kicks. He also likes to throw the flying knee to close distance. He's a good grappler. A nice timing on his entries. Good in scrambles, good in top control, good ground and pound. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Move over to Tucker. Tucker's much different than Ige's style, where Ige is come forward and blitz you with volume. Tucker's got a style on you. Like he's a southpaw who's elusive. He's very fluid, fast hands, high output, nice snap on his strikes. He closes the distance well with his striking. He's actually a guy who likes to cut angles coming from different attacks, kind of get you guessing while he's when he's coming forward. He's got an accurate left hand. He mixes kicks in well, hard kicks, step in knees. But similar to Ige, he's also taken a lot of damage, as you mentioned, in that Rick Glenn fight. He was also dropped by Justin James of all people in their fight. But as Ige was a grappler who really improved his striking, Tucker was a striker who really improved his grapple, like you mentioned lately. He's went from a weakness to probably a strength in his grappling. He's good at winning scrambles. He passes guard easily, and he's a submission threat. I think this. So we both agree this is a good fight. You feeling really good about Ige? I'm not feeling really good. Like to me, this is an amazing fight. To me, this is like the no-brainer fight of the night based on their high volume. I expect it to be back and forth. Both guys having good moments, but I can't get over the fact that Ige has fought higher level, and his output just breaks people. People are upset about him winning a decision over Edson Barboza, which I agree. I scored it for Edson Barboza, but at the end of that fight, he was still mentally breaking Edson Barboza with his just nonstop coming forward, charging style. So give me Ige to win a very fun fight of the night decision.
That brings us to the co-main event and the heaviest fight on the card, unless Eryk Anders or Darren Stewart really, really blow weight badly, in a light heavyweight matchup between Misha Cirkunov and Ryan Spann. Cirkunov, the 34-year-old Latvian by way of Canada, is 15-5 overall. He is 7-3 in the UFC, though he has not appeared since winning a fight over Jimmy Crute by Peruvian necktie of all things back at UFC Fight Night Cowboy versus Gaethje back in September of 2019. He'll be returning to face Spann. The 29-year-old Houston native is 18-6 overall. He is 4-1 since joining the UFC off of his second appearance on Dana White's Contender Series. He had an unsuccessful appearance on season 1, then came back in season 2, choked out Emiliano Sordi in about 30 seconds, and ever since has been plying his trade in the octagon. He started his UFC run with a 4-fight win streak. That came to an end last September against Johnny Walker at UFC Fight Night Covington versus Woodley. Perhaps for that reason, Spann is just the slightest of underdogs against the returning Cirkunov. Spann is out there at even money or even plus 105 or so, where Cirkunov is minus 125 as the favorite. Keith, I always feel as though there are two Misha Cirkunovs out there. They're identical twins, and we don't know which one we've got until about 90 seconds into the fight, because by that point, he's either lost by insane knockout or he has won by insane submission. So please clear it up for me. Tell me which Misha Cirkunov we're going to see in the octagon this Saturday, and how you see the fight going.
Yeah, dude, I wish I knew. So yeah, that's so funny you said that, because when I was writing down my notes, like I didn't feel confident in anything I wrote down. like this could happen. Like he could do these things, or he could suddenly not know how to grapple at all, or he could be really strong, or he could flop. Cirkunov southpaw, his hands are pretty slow. Like he actually kind of similar to Eryk Anders. He's got these big muscles and his punches don't come out fast. His striking needs a lot of improvements. It's actually pretty ugly, but he's so physically strong. He is a judo black belt. If he can get in the clinch, he's got some trips. He can shoot for takedowns. He just blasts doubles through your hips. And when he's on the ground, he is a legit submission threat. He's got 8 submissions in his career. His last 5 wins have been come by submission. Some really fun ones, too. I mean, the Peruvian necktie in his last fight. Move over to Spann. Can I just rant for a second?
Please.
I just rewatched the Johnny Walker fight, and I know I'm biased. I'm a big Safe Saud guy. I'm a big Fortis guy. Like I was on the Fortis MMA train way before a lot of people were. Safe Saud's I've interviewed before him. He's one of my favorite guys. He was 100% right. There was so many unanswered punches to the back of the head to Ryan Spann. It's absolutely ridiculous. Can we just fix, like, you're right now, I'm looking at you and you're wearing headphones. You're wearing these big headphones.
Yep.
Like, why can't that just be, like, the rule? Like, here are the headphones. Like, ears. Everyone has 2 ears. If you hit the ear and forward is legal. Everything behind the ear is illegal. Like, wouldn't that be so much easier? You could see if a punch is behind the ear or in front of the ear. Like, this, where is the back of the line with the whole, Big John McCarthy mohawk nonsense and all this stuff? Like, just be the ears. Like, in front of the ears in front, cool. Behind the ears, illegal. Anyways, back to the actual fight. Sorry. Ryan.
And, dude, that's the maddest I've ever seen Safe Saud.
And
because he's normally just Mr. No, I don't blame him either.
One, I don't blame him for, his fighter was doing well. But besides that, like, guys are going to get hurt. There's a reason why it's illegal. But and you have Johnny Walker, who's, come fight night, probably 225 pounds, who could generate some serious power punching your guy in the back of the head, besides winning and losing. Just the safety of the guy punching him in the back of the head about 15 times in a row. Anyways, Ryan Spann, long and lengthy guy. He can tend to be a little bit of a low output, sometimes trigger shy, though he makes up for it when he connects. He can knock you out. He's got very good power. His left hook is his best strike. But he's not just a striker. Like, they always talk about how devastating of a striker is. He's probably a better grappler than he is a striker. I think his ground game is underrated. He's a weak defensive wrestler, but he's a good jiu-jitsu artist, a good submission threat, actually. He's got 11 wins by way of submission. His guillotine is his go-to move, so if Cirkunov gets lazy and shoots in and keeps his head in there, he could get the guillotine. And then he almost had Sam Alvey in a standing arm triangle where Sam Alvey was red. It looked like he was just about to go out when somehow Sam Alvey got out of it. This is an interesting matchup. Spann could have a lot of success if he strikes with Cirkunov. However, he's been looking to wrestle more and more, and I just don't think that's a good game plan to play with Cirkunov because, while Spann might be able to catch a submission, he's not going to win a straight-up wrestling match against Cirkunov. And I actually think Cirkunov's going to win the exchanges, and he's actually submitted better guys than Ryan Spann. So I think Serkinov catches a submission. And honestly, I'm glad that you talked about how inconsistent Serkinov is. I want to go bold. Like, I'm going to say good Serkinov shows up. I'm so confident. I'm locking it in as my lock of the night. Good Serkinov shows up, catches a second round submission.
Ooh. Oh, man. I can't wait for the recap if Spann just clocks him in 45 seconds. But this will be a fun fight to recap either way. When I think about Misha Serkinov, I think about something that Joe Rogan once said, and it's stuck in my head for like 15 years now. Like, obviously, Rogan, having done this job for as long as he has, he's said a few things that are kind of out there. But one thing he said was that high-level judokas are always stronger than they look. They just have this insane core strength that comes from just the hours and hours and thousands of reps of, I mean, it's not even wrestling. It's like, situations where you're using your body weight and the other guy's body weight as leverage, and they just build this incredible strength. And he was using it in talking about Karo Parisian, who, I mean, Parisian always looked a little doughy even when he was, in the best shape of his life. But that's always stayed with me. And now I'm looking at Misha Serkinov, who looks strong as fuck. And I was thinking, and he's even stronger than he looks. And that's always stuck in my head when, and I think about it every time I see Serkinov fight. Serkinov, we've already gone over how he's kind of a two true outcome fighter. He either completely runs game on somebody in the grappling, or he gets knocked out by something silly. But, man, I can see Spann catching him with something so easily in the first round. Like we've talked about, like you just mentioned, Spann is a Fortis guy. Safe knows exactly where his bread is buttered here. I'm sure he doesn't want Spann even to clinch with Serkinov. Just can we trust Spann to do the thing that is in his best interest here? I'm also curious as to what Serkinov is going to look like after almost a year and a half off. He's 34. He has a sneaky high number of MMA fights. This will be his 21st fight. He had a career in judo before that. Is he going to be falling off? Because Spann is still even probably entering his prime as an athlete now. I don't feel comfortable with it. And I mean, we're going to know one way or the other within about 3 minutes, but I'm going to pick the other one true outcome here. I'm going to pick Spann to come in, be on his feet, be on his bike, start tagging Serkinov from outside, catch him with something. Serkinov is dazed. This thing is over. Give me Spann by first round knockout. And it is definitely not my lock of the night. But if it happens, I'm going to act like it was. That brings us to the main event. A welterweight 5-round, presumably, hopefully, please God, title eliminator between Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad. Edwards, the 29-year-old Jamaican-British fighter, is 18-3 overall. He is 10-2 in the UFC. As we mentioned off the top, he is on an 8-fight winning streak, most recently defeating Rafael dos Anjos by a pretty lopsided unanimous decision at UFC on ESPN4 all the way back in July of 2019. He will be facing Muhammad. Muhammad, also 18-3. He is 9-3 in the UFC. He is on a 4-fight win streak. And to underscore the difference in activity rate between the two, the last 3 fights of that 4-fight winning streak have all come since the last time Edwards appeared in the cage. Most recently, Muhammad faced Diego Lima just a few weeks ago at UFC 258, winning a unanimous decision. He comes in here on fairly short notice as Khamzat Chimaev, unable to go due to lingering effects from COVID. His stated retirement, that is Chimaev's, turned out possibly to be an exaggeration, but nonetheless, he is not stepping into the cage this Saturday. Instead, it will be Muhammad who will step up for the breakthrough fight that he deserves, perhaps almost as much as Edwards deserves a title shot. Keith, I'm going to toss this to you, but first, just give me your 30-second breakdown and prediction of who you would have had between Edwards and Chimaev and why.
You know what? That's so tough because you really have to just rewatch the film study on like Chimaev. I'm not like sold on him yet. Like he's looks incredible, but he's also looked incredible against extremely lower level competition. Like it going from the competition he went to Leon Edwards is one of the biggest jumps ever. You know, you're going from a guy. You said 30 seconds. I think I'm already going over 30 seconds, and I haven't gave you a prediction. But yeah, it's tough to not take the veteran who's fought at a high level, who's also on a, what'd you say, 8-fight winning streak against very good guys. But then it's also hard to pick against any killing, you know, Russian fighter, Russian-ish, whatever country he's actually from, that area of the world where he just looks like the next coming. So
Yep.
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
I'm with you. It was a hard one to pick, but I think I would have leaned Edwards just because he's been fighting such better competition, and he's just not a guy that people were able to blitz and pressure and jump in and hurt him. Like, it's not just that he's on an 8-fight winning streak. I don't know how many rounds he's lost during that time. It's fitting that the last guy to beat him was Kamaru Usman, because Kamaru Usman is the only guy that's even more like airtight and suffocating. Anyway, between Edwards and Muhammad, how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, so it's funny. We're talking going back to Leon Edwards. For like the longest time, like during this streak, maybe 5 or 6 fights in, I just viewed him as like a B level of like, oh, this is a guy who just kind of got in the top 10 of welterweight, but he's not an A level fighter. But he then just kept beating everyone. And then I do tape study on him, and I'm like, oh wow, that's why he beats everyone, because this dude is really skilled. Like he really. Oh, the reason why he's beating everyone? Oh, because he is an A level fighter. He's a southpaw who's light on his feet. He's got very good footwork, both avoiding, learning distance and circling and moving, and he uses, his footwork as his first line of defense, but also lining up his attacks. He keeps his feet underneath them to generate power. He's a good counter striker. He uses feints really well. He's got good vision. He's accurate. His head movement is on point. So he's got a very slip and rip style. So he'll slip, come over the top with like an overhand left. Good power. And it seems like it's actually getting, as he gets more comfortable, like he's not he just looks like a guy who's knows he's good, knows he looks better every fight, and he's the confidence. And when you have confidence, the power seems to come with it. It's like a match. And he's such a good wrestler, which is so rare for, that part of Europe, to be, like England, UK is not really known for the wrestling, but he's really good. He's got some entries, but really the body, like he just gets in the clinch. He's so strong, which works out even better to get there because he'll wear you down in the clinch and then kick you down. So you're getting tired, and then he slams you on the ground. He's on top, and he just smothers you. He keeps busy with ground pound. I haven't seen him slow down in a fight. Now, you move over to Muhammad. My notes didn't change much in his last fight. He's a little undersized, which will be an issue against a guy like Leon Edwards, who's a big guy. But he's got a very intelligent fight IQ. He's a thinker. He has a game plan that he knows. He usually has the right game plan, and he executes it. And then a lot of that has to do with like his lack of overall skill. He's not the most explosive guy. He's not the best wrestler. He's not the best striker. Like he's not. He doesn't have the best card. Like everything you talk about Bilal Muhammad, like there's nothing that jumps off the page about like, oh, this is what he's elite at. But he knows these limitations. And when you know the limitations, you can kind of get around it. You could find a way. And that's what Muhammad does so many times. He's got good movement. He stays very composed, uses feints well, works behind a jab. He constantly changing his tacks, both high and low. Calf kicks. I would still say he has some flaws defensively. Doesn't use his head movement as well as he should. Has been clocked before. I mean, Lyman Good almost knocked him out. He's a very underrated wrestler. And he didn't even use it that much against Diego Lima, which is surprising because of the fact that, that's the guy you expect to have a good wrestling advantage on. And I think his fakes of the wrestling opened up more shots. Really, and we talked about really forced Diego Lima to fight on his back foot. So he couldn't be coming forward. He couldn't really step in his shots. Kind of was froze Diego Lima for the majority of the fight. But he's a great wrestler. Good timing on dropping down on the hips when his opponents are kind of throwing at his head. Really good back takes. As far as a prediction, I like Muhammad a lot. I like him. He's, I don't know. He's just like he's a good dude who willing to fight everyone, willing to take guys on short notice. Kind of when he first came to UFC, never expected this guy to be headlining, UFC cards, being in the top 15-ish range, and just like deservingly so. Like he didn't just get to this one. It wasn't like he jumped that opportunity when someone was out. Like he's racked up win after win after win. That says he has a ceiling that that is, it's not this level. It's not this level because of his lack of explosion, lack of athleticism. You can only get so far, and you have to have some natural elite skills, and he doesn't have that. Edwards is above that level, in my opinion. I think he's simply just better everywhere. I think he's faster. I think he's more technical on the feet. I think even though Muhammad is a good wrestler, I think Edwards is probably even a better wrestler. He's bigger than him. I think he beats up Muhammad on the feet. I think he beats him up on the ground. And if he's anywhere now, he's been out for 20 months. It's been a very long time. It's been almost 2 years since we've seen Leon Edwards based on COVID and fallouts and all this. But if he's anywhere near the fighter we saw leave, I think he finishes him. So give me Leon Edwards by 4th round TKO, and I'll say it's on the ground with ground and pound.
Outstanding. The thing that, I kind of hinted at off the top of this one, and then you came back to, is that Edwards is good everywhere. There's a certain airtightness to his game. I think it was like maybe right after the Cerrone fight that I asked myself, and probably asked in a column, is Leon Edwards like the best MMA wrestler from England? And I still think he might be. And the funny thing is, it's not because he was a wrestler. He's a guy that started training MMA. He's a guy that just walked into an MMA gym. He's not like he was a wrestler or a kickboxer or something before. But yeah, he's such an athlete and such an intelligent guy that he has picked up all the facets. And because he's better probably almost everywhere than almost everyone he fights, he kind of takes what they give him. And because of that, I think he wins a lot of fights by decision. Like, I think maybe he could have finished Cerrone. I don't know if he could have finished RDA, but I know I was cage side for that one. I had picked Dos Anjos to win, and I was stunned at just how much stronger Edwards was and just how futile Dos Anjos' efforts in the clinch and in trying to initiate wrestling were against him. Edwards could have beaten Dos Anjos with pretty much whatever he wanted. What he chose to beat him with was just punching him to death from the outside, and then mashing him up in the clinch a little bit late. Muhammad is going to face all those problems. I like Muhammad for all the same reasons you do. I unfairly lumped him into the action welterweight category, I think 3 or 4 years ago. He came in, he had a bunch of good fights with guys like Vicente Luque, Randy Brown, Tim Means, and I was like, okay, he's in that kind of universe of guys that might scrape the top 15 once in a while, but for the most part, they're just kind of bonus magnets. They're going to get a lot of fight of the night, performance of the night type things, but he just kept on winning. We've talked about Edwards' crazy long win streak, but Muhammad has won 8 of his last 9, and they've been over some good fighters. And he's beaten them in surprising ways. And a lot of them, he's beaten much bigger guys. He's always been undersized for welterweight. He continues to be undersized. But even against dudes like Lyman Good and Curtis Millender, who are big welterweights, he found ways to win. He's just not going to find them against Edwards. Edwards doesn't have the kind of holes in his game that Lyman Good, or even like a Tim Means has. Muhammad is super, super tough. It's hard for me to pick him like getting finished. The one time he got blitzed by Luque, who's like, just a knockout machine and a super fast starter. But I could see Edwards just grinding him down and getting a finish late, kind of like you've predicted. But for the sake of variety, I will say this goes to decision. And that'll just make it even more fun and spicy because all of the Edwards haters will howl that he's a boring fighter, even though I think it's exciting to see people who are great at what they do what they do. So I don't find Edwards boring, but that'll be the scream. Kamaru Usman has already been calling for Edwards to get his shot. When the champion is calling for you, hey man, all you got to do is step up to the plate and hit that pitch. I think Edwards is going to do it. Give me Leon Edwards by a pretty lopsided decision. He might take all 5 rounds. There you have it. Predictions for all 13 fights from UFC Fight Night 187, Edwards versus Muhammad. For Keith Schillant, I am Ben Duffy. You can find both of our work on SureDog.com. Make sure to check us out either through the SureDog front page or directly on the SureDog YouTube page for our live recap of this event immediately after the main event, where we will take your questions, take your comments, and if we picked all these wrong, take your abuse. Keith, say goodbye to the nice people.
Goodbye, nice people.